Church can feel uncomfortable sometimes. They were reminded of their own resistance to go to church. And that day, the people that came were ready to hear about a church that was different. I have been convinced that when the arts are expressed in church, that they deeply connect us to God. That the arts have a way of moving us, of making us somehow more aware of our own humanity, while at the same time making us more connected to the divine. Have you ever felt that? We talked about that a little bit ago, of if you've ever felt that, how art has moved you. And creative, artistic expression, it helps us connect with God. And ever since that early Acts 2 church, for hundreds, thousands of years, the church has been using art to connect people to God. In the 9th century, it looked like Gregorian chants. Now, to us, maybe that doesn't feel real engaging, but to them, that was words, prayers, sort of sung and chanted. A little bit later, they would take poetic parts of scripture and set them to just simple melodies, and they would sing them and encourage one another in the middle of that kind of art. A little bit later, liturgical dramas came about where they would reenact biblical stories to help them come alive for people. And in addition to all that, they expressed the art and connection to God through the building itself. Has anybody been to Europe? Where you get to see these basilicas that were built and the Byzantine churches and just the beautiful architecture. And that's just the outside. You go inside and there's frescoes painted on the ceiling and on the walls. They use sculptures where you'd walk in and you'd be reminded of different characters that are important in the biblical story. And of course, probably what we're most familiar with is stained glass. And stained glass wasn't just for decoration. Stained glass depicted these scenes, biblical scenes that were telling a story through pictures. And then fast forward from that time to 1988, when Crosswinds had its first service. And from the very beginning, this place was committed to using the arts to stir people's hearts. In the very first Crosswind service, I reached out to Debbie Merritt. Some of you know her. She and John started the church along with some other people who are still part of Crosswinds today. The very first service had a drama scene in it that involved a new couple that was coming to church for the first time. And as they walked in, they met a bunch of stereotypical sort of church characters, like maybe not the kind that are super welcoming, sort of the holy roller guy and the woman who's like nice on the outside, but like super judgy and condescending, really. And it was funny, and it helped people there for the first time see that the church was making fun of itself, that it was letting you laugh. And because people laughed, you know what happened? Walls went down. And because they got to see this, they were reminded of how church can feel uncomfortable sometimes. They were reminded of their own resistance to go to church. All those feelings were stirred. And that day, the people that came were ready to hear about a church that was different. A church where you would not encounter that, a church that taught about a God that welcomed you to really be who you are and come as you are. And the reason Crosswinds, as well as the church that I started going to when I was 18, are so committed to using creative arts is because something significant happens when our hearts are stirred. Like laughing does that, comedy does that, poignant moments can do that. Nancy Beach is a longtime pastor who really was one of the pioneers of the modern kind of using creative arts in church. And she wrote a book, and this is how she describes it. She writes this: most people don't expect to be moved by anything at church. They most often assume that church will engage only their heads, not their hearts. So, if we can help attenders access deep feelings, laugh from the gut, relate to something sad, or get angry about injustice, we serve them well. She goes on, God designed all of us to be both thinkers and feelers. We definitely need to use our heads in church to learn truths about God, but it is equally vital that we be moved. And the great news, she says, is that the arts have unbelievable potential to move human beings. I believe that is why God gave us the arts. The arts move us in a way that make us ready to receive whatever God has for us. The arts are also a kind of mirror. They can help us look inward and help us see ourselves more clearly, more deeply, sometimes more accurately. We did a funny sketch a few months back that was about a character who was an over-helper named Martin. And throughout the scene, you learned that Martin tried to overhelp in all sorts of ways. He took the little t-ball players to the batting cages because they thought they needed more practice, but they're like 5, they all got hurt, He tried to help his neighbor. He tried to help the interns at his work because he felt bad for them, so he just did their work for them. Meanwhile, the boss is wondering why the interns aren't getting any better at their work. And so the scene is about all these people coming around him to stop him from all the helping he was doing. And they kind of almost had an intervention of sorts. And when you watch a sketch like that, you're laughing at the idea, the character of this guy, and then it hits you. You're Martin. And maybe it opens up your eyes a little too. Is the impact you think you're having on people around you really the impact? And can people in your life be honest with you about how you're impacting them? And in that moment, you have been moved by something creative. You have been able to look inward and be more introspective and be ready to hear what God might have for you in that. And the arts do that. They mirror, they make a mirror to be able to see inward, but also I think the arts help us see outward, to face outward. Storytelling through drama or song or video or even dance. It helps us better understand someone else. Last week, we shared the story of a woman in our church who had a difficult journey of finding a church after she had deconstructed some beliefs that growing up she was taught you had to believe if you were a Christian. And she shared about how hard it was for her to find this place. And afterwards, I had several of you come up to me really resonating with that story because you said, that was my story too. But the truth is, I know that there are a lot of you that's not your story. And yet, when you received her story, you were able to better understand somebody who's been through a journey like that. You were maybe able to have more compassion for someone. You were better able to understand the people that you do church with. That's what storytelling can do. It reveals those kind of things and draws us into someone else's story, what it's like to walk in their shoes. And that's what God does. God uses the arts to move people. And so in our service, we use creative expression because we want to help you be aware and attuned, not just to what you're thinking about, but what you're feeling. We want things to resonate with you in your heart. We want to kind of pull your emotions out of you. And sometimes we use the arts because, maybe we want to make you feel angry. Maybe we want you to get in touch with some sadness in your life that you've sort of tried to forget about. We might use the arts because we want you to fall in love all over again. We might use the arts to help you recognize maybe some fear that you have that is playing into the anxiety that you feel. And we do all of that because we believe it leads you to God.